Okay, I hope that you can now all see my presentation. Hold on, I just have to go back. So can I just get the thumbs up? Okay, good. Yes. Great. And I think that as long as the Zoom is operating and we do not see any technical problems, it is actually nice to see some of you. So I think it would be nice if you keep your cameras open, especially when we have our discussions. So let me introduce this session. My name is Angela Schulz-Zeden, and I'm the Managing Director of the Submariner Network. I have also the pleasure today in this workshop to then present our President of the Submariner Network, who is a very happy person today because there has been a big move been made forward into the blue bioeconomy in Sweden, at least, given the fact that today came the approval of a seafood center, and we will hear more about this later on. So first of all, in terms of technicalities, it should be an interactive session and not only presentations. So please ask your questions and put comments very proactively into the chat room, as well as then reply to the polls on Slido. And I think that Lisa has put in also the link, but since you have used perhaps also Slido in the last session, now it is important that you move from reboot the bioeconomy into just the blue bioeconomy. Later on, we will then even use another interactive way to sort of get all your thoughts into it by using Jamboards, but don't open it now yet. You will get the link also later on. So what is our agenda? I mean, now that everything has been moved, I will give you a very short snapshot into the blue bioeconomy, at least on how we sort of see it in the Baltic Sea region. We will then get some input presentations from some of our key members, showing really examples of what the blue bioeconomy means concretely. We will then have a panel discussion, including you, all the participants, by working, not only discussing with the speakers, but at the same time also working on a whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard. And then we should sort of come up with some conclusions. So what is the aim of this breakout room? Actually, we would like to bring back to the big global bioeconomy plenary some concrete ideas and answers to the following three issues. First of all, what are really scalable and actionable bioeconomy solutions which are stimulating economic growth and regional development at the same time, and which could also be implemented now in the context of the COVID-19 recovery plans. And what are therefore then also our recommendations to be brought to policymakers on the most urgent steps, which really need to be taken in order to promote and enable the blue bioeconomy to promote this economic growth. And here more specifically, what has to be done in the development of green deals and recovery plans. And then, of course, last but not least, it's not only for others, it's also among us that we would like to exchange good practices among ourselves on practical bioeconomy solutions around the different continents, perhaps even, if not, different countries. So let me first, I assume that all of you are blue bioeconomy experts. We will see very shortly in the Slido where you are from and to what extent you sort of rate yourself expert. But just to understand always that the blue bioeconomy is really just a little tiny piece of the overall blue economy cake for so far. When we talk about the blue economy, it's very often much more about ocean energy, shipping, and, yes, of course, also fishery. But fishery is not necessarily what we understand as blue bioeconomy. That's more sort of the new uses of sustainable fish aquaculture or use of fish side streams. Secondly, in the framework of the Global Bioeconomy Summit, we also have to be aware that the blue is just a tiny piece in the overall bioeconomy cake. And we see it happening every time, every so often, that actually the big piece of what is regarded as the bioeconomy is land-based. So we are talking about farmed land, we are talking about forestry, we are talking about wilderness. But even the freshwater, so which is obviously also part of the blue, as well as the marine bioeconomy is, even though it should be a big part of the cake, given the fact that, as we all know, the ocean, 70% of the Earth is actually the ocean, but actually so far it's still only a tiny drop. So what is the blue bioeconomy? It is actually, as you can see here from the little picture, it's really about the conversion and commercial use of living aquatic resources into a very wide variety of products and services. It's not only about eating fish. It is actually also about marine ingredients in food, in feed, in biofuels, but also in medical devices. It's about bioremediation. It's of course also about healthcare and cosmetics. And I think what is also very important to note is not that it's only about products, but that it's also about services. It's really about also ocean recovery in view of CO2 uptake. This is what we have heard today also about the importance of carbon sequestration and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And here the blue bioeconomy can really play a very important role. So what is then the Submariner network for blue growth? It's actually two things. It's a transnational collaboration, knowledge and innovation platform of all actors throughout the Baltic Sea region involved in the blue bioeconomy, but it's actually also a very strategic approach to implement actions to promote sustainable and innovative uses of marine resources. And what do we mean here is that actually we are not simply a kind of conglomeration of actors. We have set ourselves a very clear roadmap in 2013, and we are very strategically going about it to sort of implement the various actions we have set ourselves. And actually tomorrow we will have our 11th members assembly, and we'll sort of think about our roadmap 2021 plus, given the fact that our current status quo report shows that we have been very lucky in terms of being able to implement the actions we have set ourselves in the past 7 years. So what are our topics? We are talking about macroalgae and mussel cultivation. We are talking about use of reed and beach cast wreck, what it's normally called. We are, of course, talking about sustainable fish aquaculture or blue biotechnology, but we are actually also taking on board more and more topics which have come up in the meantime, such as dealing with marine litter, or also soft issues such as dealing with marine cultural heritage. And these are the topics, and you can see yourself that we have set ourselves a whole variety of different action fields which are necessary in order then to really come to the objectives we have set ourselves. So what do we promote concretely? Well, I have actually almost said everything here already, but in terms of algae and mussel cultivations, the issue being that it's not only about novel food or novel feed, but it's also about nutrient uptake. And I have already talked about valorization of waste, as well as then also multi-use the colleague from South Africa has talked about maritime spatial planning. That is very much on our agenda. And working as sort of the roof, the joint platform as the Baltic Blue Bioeconomy Hub, we are continuously then merging the results of the projects and bring them forward to the next level of actions and sort of synthesize the results into very short policy papers in order then to really make the change happen. And in terms of really what we do, is that in the Baltic at least, and I think that this is actually the case worldwide, we have actors, we do have, you know, good institutions active in the blue bioeconomy, but having shown that this is only a little drop in the ocean, we still also have to be aware that we have to create the critical mass of action. So we have to bring the different actors across the different regions and nations together in order then to form really concrete actions. And this is actually what we do. So we sort of really, you know, do a very strategic matchmaking and therefore then sort of end up in joint initiatives. By now we have, this is an old slide, we by now have 36 members, we have 20 projects, and we have raised 41 million euro, but nevertheless, I mean, these are just figures. What I think this is most important is that when we started, it was mainly research. Now, in our mapping, just in the Baltic Sea region, we can see that we have now already more than 900 companies and startups involved in the blue bioeconomy. And I think that this is very important. So, okay, here I will not go into details. And here you sort of see the overview in terms of the various projects and sort of then the overall covering working groups. And here, just to give you an example, we will hear about mussel cultivation later on. In the Baltic Sea region, this is something which is not so much for food. It's really the only existing sea-based measure currently in the Baltic Sea region to pick up the nutrient load, which is already in our highly polluted and eutrophied Baltic Sea. And we have created a permanent working group basically to bring together the knowledge from across various projects working on it in order to drive the story forward and to then come up with very concrete policy papers from, you know, hundreds of pages going to a 6-page policy paper recommendation. And we are very happy to see that this has really caused change because this autumn, in October 2020, we got the ministerial decision to accept mussel farming as a nutrient mitigation and compensation measure within the Baltic Sea region. And that's the first time that this has been accepted as a sea-based measure and not to work only at point sources. So, you know, what is also about, it's not only mussel cultivation, it's also about algae, something which is, you know, common in Asia, but which is completely new in the Baltic Sea region, and where, you know, we have projects to show that this actually can be done. And we have, you know, today a speaker who will talk about the algae cultivation at the west coast of Sweden. And here also, you know, in terms of aquaculture in the Baltic Sea region, this is really about moving land-based to create recirculating aquaculture systems, which are much more safer. They are, you know, having much more protected environment. They use less water, and actually they can be everywhere since they are land-based. And then last but not least, also, you know, about multi-use in European seas. This is a wide picture. Why multi-use? Because it's also about using the space, ocean space efficiently. Thereby, you know, if you see here, for instance, the very many offshore wind parks, to use this space also for other forms of production, such as aquaculture, but also as protection measures, now oyster recovery plans or nature protection areas. Okay, I dropped this here in order to move forward. Last but not least, I would sort of, actually promote our accelerator. We are really working more and more with startups. And what we see as important is they don't only need money. They need actually also the joint expertise from the blue sector, and actually the collaboration also with other companies in order to jointly drive forward. And so here you see sort of, we are very happy that these are really sort of our results of the accelerator. And in the global context, I think what is important to note is that by promoting the blue bioeconomy, you're also promoting the achievement of the Global Sustainable Development Goals. And what you can see here in the picture in view of the cases we have mentored is that it's not only about life below water. So it's not only about goal 14, but it actually also affects many other goals. Last but not least, given the fact that we have heard about the youth, we are also increasingly working on ocean literacy. We are the Baltic Sea focal point of the EU for Ocean Coalition, which is about the youth. It's, however, also about networks of blue schools. But what we see actually as very important is that it's also about general ocean literacy of the consumer. So actually, we put the focus on conscious consumption choices. Okay, and we hope that we will have the opportunity, even though virtual conferences like this one are resource efficient, and they may actually bring more people around the globe together. But at the same time, we think that it's still very important to have a personal network full of trust, and hope that we will be able to very soon in 2021 or in 2022 to have sort of personal meetings again. So there is still a lot to be done. The next topics will be digitalization, will be about ecosystem restoration, will be especially also about improved consumer uptake of blue food, still overcoming regulatory barriers, as well as technology developments. And having said all this, I would now like to give the floor to our speakers. And the next one is Fredrik Gröndal. I think that now, I hope that Lisa, that you will be able to sort of share the screen for Fredrik and give him the floor to give us an insight into the seafood, the new seafood center, brand new in Sweden, and what this is all about.
Okay, do you manage this, Lisa? You received my 7.
I did. Do you want me to share it, or will you?
Yeah, please do with that. I think so. I have it also, but it might be better than that you share it. Okay.
Great. We can see it.
Great. Thank you very much, Lisa. And I'm going to have a very short presentation here. My name is Fredrik Gröndal, and I work at the Royal Technical Institute of KTH in Stockholm, Sweden. And I've been engaged with this blue growth things for quite a long while. And I will tell you a little bit about what we are doing in Sweden from a European perspective. I'm a little bit confused today because today we received our seafood center from the Swedish Research Council Formas, and that was 13 million euro. So I was a little bit shaky, and everybody are messing me. So if I'm not completely focused, that is the reason. But it was a very positive thing anyway. So please, next picture. Yeah, as you know, the planet is blue, and it should be. It's 71% of our surface is blue, and we actually need to utilize this blue area much better and in a sustainable way. And I mean that is about what it's all about, to use the big surfaces, the big areas of our planet for aquaculture, for energy systems, transportation, etc. And all this is blue growth. And it's a very underused place of our planet. So please, next slide. And this is exactly what the European Union wants. It is to sort of unlock the potential of seas and oceans. We have been very bad on utilizing the ocean. We have just polluted it, or we have been fishing in a very voracious way, taking up big predator fish like tuna fish and cod, etc., and depleting the treasures of the ocean. But it's actually time now to see what we could do it in a sustainable way, and actually release some space on land that is even more overused nowadays. We have reached the carrying capacity of the land-based ecosystem. And we just need to go out in the ocean, but we need to do it in a clever way and do it in a sustainable way. But if we manage to do that, this will create the future's new jobs, and the growth of the economy and so on will be happening if we could do this in the ocean in a good way. So the other picture here is just to see the renewable energy systems. We have the aquaculture and so on. There are a lot of activities that could take place in the ocean, but we also need to learn how to do it, and we need to develop new tools. And I myself work as an algae farmer and biorefinery concept, and I say sometimes to be a farmer in the sea. We have been working with that, at least in Sweden and Europe, maybe for a very short time, maybe only 10 years, but the farmers on land have been working with this for 10,000 years. So we have a lot to learn, actually. Please, next slide. Yeah. And what I would like to focus on specifically now is the aquaculture. And this figure is just showing the word capture of fishery, and that is the yellow sign here. And then we have and you could see how aquaculture is now coming, and that is both in inland waters, fresh waters, and in marine waters. But you could also see that nowadays nearly half of the capture is actually coming from aquaculture. So this is a very big growing sector of the blue growth. We could take next picture. This is just, and then the next one. Yeah, and you could see also that we are reaching sort of in ecology, you say carrying capacity. We have reached that more for the wild fishery. It's very hard to get more out of the ocean by increasing the fishery. But with the aquaculture, we have a potential of increasing the production from the ocean, and that is what we need to develop. So even in Sweden, for example, today the wild capture is the big catch of ocean food, but the future lies in the aquaculture sector. We could take next slide. Yeah. This is what, yeah. And this is the word according to aquaculture. And it's in a way interesting because it really says that we are in Europe or even in the West world here, we are undeveloped in this area. You could see that countries like China are really the big players in this. And we just have to start to learn that. And even if we have a country like Norway, for example, they are still far behind in aquaculture if you compare to our Asian partners in China and Korea and Japan, for example, and Indonesia. Could you take the next slide? Yeah, this is just the regional contribution for fishery and aquaculture production. And you can see that still it's the marine capture are the yellow ones, and the red ones are the capture from freshwater inland waters, and the dark blue ones are the aquaculture in freshwater or inland waters, and the light blue is marine areas and aquaculture. So even in countries like China and other parts of Asia, it's still the marine part is still under development and is growing. They have done it a lot in freshwater and inland waters before, but it's still increasing. And you can see how if you go to Europe here, you have China, you have Asia, Americas, Europe, Africa, and Oceania. You could see Europe, there is still very undeveloped, the catch or the aquaculture sector. And there is a great potential to increase this. So please, next slide. We could continue here. This is actually my last one here. And where is the big potential? And this for seafood. And we say seafood are crabs and herring and salmon. Just recently, a study came about lobsters in Sweden, and that it's causing a bigger carbon footprint than it's a very polluting in that sense, polluting with carbon dioxide. But we are not aiming so much for these high trophical levels, and their potential to increase that is very little. But what we have to aim for in order to get a nutritional rich seafood in the future and healthy seafood for the great use of it and get down the prices is actually to look at algae and mussels, the low trophical levels, and to develop that. And as I said initially here when I started just today, in Sweden, we have managed to group all the leading universities in this area, in the seafood area, and 70 companies from the production side until the selling side of it, the whole process chain. And all of these are gathered together now in this huge center that we go for the coming 8 years. And the overall aim for this center is to boost the seafood in Sweden and make Sweden a leading producer, I would say, of sustainable produced food from the oceans. And this is a really fantastic challenge that we got, and it started today. So
thank you, Frederick. I think that you know, in order to sort of still be able to sort of talk a little bit to each other,
I'm finished. No
I would like to sort of as I said, I mean, please put questions into the chat room, and please stay also on board because we do have a discussion later on. Now I would like to give the floor to Hania, also one of our members from Submariner from Poland. And even though Frederick was talking about low trophic aquaculture, which we also promote in that region, Hania will sort of tell us more about another environmental friendly way of aquaculture. So in terms of the development of RAS, recirculating aquaculture systems in Poland. Hania, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you very much for your introduction. Please, can I have share my screen?
Are you not able to? Yeah, you are. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Once again, my name is Hanna Łąckowska and welcome from the University of Gdańsk in Poland, when I work on project management and technology transfer. For today's session, I will share with you some examples of ideas and associated with innovative aquaculture technologies and professional education, which I hope can somehow stimulate the blue growth under this corona crisis. Okay, here we are. As we probably all know, the European Commission agenda for the blue growth identifies aquaculture as one of the most promising sectors of maritime economy, especially in terms of the growth and job potential. Despite of the fact that European aquaculture is renowned for its high quality and consumer protection standards, the overall production has been more or less the same for the last 20 years. Also, the traditional cultivation method and species are still dominant. However, there was a large investment recently in modern technologies, also in recirculating aquaculture systems. I will mention a few examples from Poland. The first one is Jurassic Salmon, the company which is producing Atlantic salmon, but with the use of the geothermal water coming from the Jura period. Another example on the right side is a pure salmon, which is also producing salmon. However, the RAS facility, when established, was designed to be the largest European facility to raise tilapia under control conditions. Also, there is an example of the smaller investments like a fish farm K2, which is producing the rainbow trout, but in the recirculating aquaculture system. And over the last 5 years, we are engaged in the aquaculture project with the focus on sustainable use of marine resources, testing new methods and technologies, and also on a cross-sectoral international cooperation. And all of the projects have the common aim to support technology transfer through the dedicated education and also through the demonstration pilot cases, even sometimes controversial, like for example the ones we had before under the InAquatech project, which focused on white-tailed shrimp cultivation in laboratory scale RAS facility, and also in the broader sense looking for the consumer perception and market for such a product. And our ongoing initiative, which is called AquaVip, Aquaculture Virtual Career Development Platform, which is supporting the aquaculture image itself and also providing the opportunity for the professional training and also for the larger cooperation with the business sector through the joint experiment using RAS technology and also crustacean, fish, and also with some implementation with microalgae and macroalgae. As a university, we are offering education on different levels. I would like to mention the bachelor program, which is established already, aquaculture business and technology, and also usual activities designed for the project partners like training, study visits, and consultation. I would like also mention that in a broader sense, we are aiming in education with the potential to raise consumer awareness, raise consumer perception, and to grow the attention for the bioeconomy itself, like for example, producing food with the minimal use of natural resources, and also with the potential of circular economy. And when I'm thinking about the perspective and trends which could support the implementation of the goals, I would mention the combination of marine species, fish, crustaceans in the recirculating aquaculture system. And also I will mention the application of the life cycle assessment into the new investment. And also I would like to mention the activities, demonstration, pilots, and new investments which can support the circular economy. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your question if arise.
Thank you, Hanya, and thank you also to stick to the time. I would now like to move back to Sweden, to Catherine Legrand, to, I hope I pronounced you correctly, who will give us insights into mussel farming, correct?
That and probably some other things as well.
Okay.
Because as I imagine Per is going to cover mussels. Lisa, should I share my screen? Yes, okay.
Yes, please.
I can do that in definitely. I hope you can think. Yeah, so I would like today to give you a few perspectives and a few thoughts on blue bioeconomy. Thank you to Submariner for inviting me. I've been thinking about the 3 topics for this workshops about best practice for scalable and actionable solutions for blue bioeconomy. And in the Baltic Sea, which is a brackish sea, quite eutrophied, unlike the west coast of Sweden, for instance. There are a few focus, and that could be on recovery of carbon dioxide, recovery of nitrous oxides, of different types of nutrients, phosphor, nitrogen. We could have a focus, a blue bioeconomy focus on feed, producing feed based on mussels, based on macroalgae for poultry and fish. Maybe you heard the news recently, thousands of minks were put down in Denmark, and because of COVID, and they were infected with viruses. Which is interesting is that they were fed with a sprat, a small fish fished in the Baltic Sea, and that means that all industry has to shut down. So yes, it's very important to consider blue bioeconomy for recovering after COVID. Algae mussels have been grown extensively in different type of pilot demo projects in the Baltic Sea. Because of the low salinity, the productivity is much lower than in real marine waters. And then finally, what is scalable? It's again the algal technology, collaborating with this private-public partnership, as Blake mentioned earlier. It's one thing that is on the growth, and although sometimes technology is in control, education and training, as in Google mentioned, is an important part of the actions. I would like to give an example. Our research has been very much focused on a combination and circular economy into the blue bioeconomy. We have been looking at growing microalgae to capture carbon dioxide and to produce biomass, that in connection coupled to mussels, blue mussels biomass could be transformed into feed for poultry and the poultry industry. And one of the thought here is that if we think in a circular way, then things are, the pieces of the puzzles make sense. And for instance, just an example here from the graph that you can see here, we have been capturing industry flue gas from power plants, for instance. We have been using dairy water from a cheese factory, a very famous Swedish cheese factory, which has been able to provide phosphorus and nitrogen for the microalgae. And together with the blue mussels grown in the Baltic Sea, we could actually provide 10% of poultry feed. And what is interesting in that is that the technology was working, the technique is working, the market is not there, and people are not prepared. So the willingness and the acceptance are definitely something that is to be thoughtful for. And then I would like to show another concept. Angela talked about the multi-purpose platforms, and very recent is the idea that we are developing with RWE, a large renewable energy company, was based in Germany, who owns one of the largest offshore wind park in the Baltic Sea. And our university has a microbial observatory just nearby. So we have been monitoring the waters for about 10 years. And we are together going ahead with developing one of these multi-purpose platforms. And we are really pleased to see that seaweed will be tried on, blue mussels will be coupled to that, and it will be coupled to underwater engineering, artificial intelligence driven real-time monitoring using different platforms, so the digitalization that we heard about, coupled to tourism and education, and of course school classes, but also real tourism. And then finally, a little thoughts on the contribution of blue bioeconomy to climate action initiative. In Sweden, Sweden is about 70% of the country that is covered by forest. And when you ask a Swede about how does Sweden look like, they would say it's green. Except if you live like Fredrik on the West Coast, then they would say the sea is there. 25% of carbon emissions reduction targets have to be met by forestry, forest sector activities. And that could be transforming wood products, stored in wood products, etc. And this industry has been really looking at how to contribute to climate actions very in detail and very good. But still the impact on other industrial carbon dioxide emissions is not really well known. Now, if we move to ocean sector activities, it has been estimated that about 21%, so it's not that far from the forest activities, that could contribute to lower the targets, which is a big chunk of reaching our targets. However, there is really the impact on other sectors is not known. When you just imagine that for the blue bioeconomy, this is just 1/5 of the ocean-based activities. So we need to consider that. Is that leading to a greater industrial emission of carbon dioxide? So for me, one message here is that the contribution of blue bioeconomy to climate cannot be just binary, but has to be embedded in sustainability lens. I mean, we need to take our glasses, sustainability glasses, to tackle this and look at the core benefits, not only just a reduction on carbon. As Blake said, carbon is not the only bad guy here. So with that, I am thanking for the time.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for this inspiring talk. I definitely have to link you up with our multi-use team. And just on that note, I think that together we are currently working on not only sustainable aquatic biomass to make sustainable products, but to make sustainable and healthy products. So even more. Now I give the floor to Per, also a long time collaborator with a lot of focus on mussels. Per is from Denmark. Per, if you can keep your input as short as possible so that we have at least a little bit of chance to sort of come up with our joint messages to the big global bioeconomy
Yes,
summit.
I'll try to keep it short. I'm Per Dolmer. I'm a private consultancy in Denmark. And I think I'll start where was coming from Fredrik, that in the Europe, there have been no growth in aquaculture or fish production for the last decades. If you look at Denmark, use Denmark as a case, then we have a lot of activities. This map shows the production of fish on land. On the west coast, we have 3.5 huge RAS system. In the inner Danish waters, we have fish farms, cage fish farms. So there is a high potential for production. If you look at the shellfish, if I can change, what's going on? Oh, sorry. If you look at the main area for shellfish production is actually Limfjord. The green areas is the huge green areas is Nature 2000 areas, but the rest of the areas is actually sites that can be used for mussel production or where there's an application for mussel production. So the condition for huge mussel production is large. If you look at the EU imports, then more than 50% of the seafood we eat in EU is actually from outside EU. So we have a huge gap of seafood that we actually import. If we look at, sorry, it will not change. Okay. If we look at the services from aquaculture, then we have, of course, the fish, but we have the food production from sea, from aquaculture. We have services in relation to climate, that when you produce the mussels, for example, you have a mineralization in mussel shells that can be used some carbon catch and storage. You have the fish farming with a low impact on climate, and then you have water quality, how mussels can be used as filter feeders to catch microalgae, increase the transparency, and increase the water quality. Yes. Denmark have a lot of front positions. We have good food systems. We have some of the large companies that actually have the capacity to produce high quality feed. We have companies that export RAS system. We have for many decades developed cage production of rainbow trout. We have developed IMTA, and we have some of the best water for mussel farming. But anyway, there is no growth of aquaculture in Denmark. And why is that? One of the reasons is actually the social acceptance, and not in my backyard. For the mussel farmers in the Limfjord, there's a problem that people don't want to look at the farms. And there's a risk that there will be no growth in mussel production. And the same with the fish farm, people don't want to look at the farms, they don't want to have the impact. So a very efficient communication and a very fast communication is needed. Then we have a very slowly regulation, we have shifting political strategies, and then we have lack of innovation in the management. That you can apply for permission, and it takes too long time before you have the permission. Then we have a lack of competent staff. There is no formal education and training that can close the gaps in relation to staff. And then we could maybe have a more focused development, research and development of technology, a closer connection between universities, companies, in order to develop seaweed farming, mussels farming, and of course the RAS technology. So I think one of the most important problems is actually the perception of aquacultures, and maybe one of the ways to go around that is to open some new discussion about the goods and services of aquaculture. One way to do that is, if you look at the picture, then there is an example from Copenhagen where we have marine gardening, where citizens can come and join producing mussels or seaweeds. There's a huge potential, especially this year and the next couple of years, for developing tourism with focus on marine production, gastronomy, nature and culture. There's a growing activity in tourism in relation to Pacific oysters in Sweden, Norway and Denmark, and this could also be developed for other type, for aquaculture. Then we should of course focus on the climate impact, that aquaculture have a low climate impact. Mussel production can be used for carbon storage. And then of course the high quality of mussels, for example, in urban areas where you can use mussel farming specifically to increase the water quality. I think it was this last slide, so thank you.
Thank you, Per. And I think that you have already given us with your last two slides sort of, some post-its for our Jamboard in terms of answering the questions. What are actually the contribution we can expect from the blue bioeconomy in terms of climate-friendly actions by COVID-19 recovery, and what should politicians do in order to sort of make this change? So I think that we have heard this also yesterday. We were in a aquaculture workshop, virtual one of course, and every time it came up, it's not only about technology, the biggest barrier is regulation. So I think that there is a bit of a also disconnect between Green Deal and climate reduction goals and then actual the reality of regulation and licensing. So now I would like you to have a look into the chat now and actually open the Jamboard. And Lisa, if you can also do so, but I mean, if all of us are opening this Jamboard, it will actually pop up on your screen, and in a miracle way, we can all jointly, I think that Lisa, if you don't share, because otherwise we see, all the time your screen. So if you all would sort of open up the Jamboard yourself, unless we want Lisa to sort of change it all. Have you opened it all now? That's the fascination of, yeah, I can see that many of you are on board. So basically, Frederick, Per, Hanya, Catherine, we have discussed this very often. In terms of climate neutrality, where do you see the best practices and examples? Here, Lisa has already put in results of some of your presentations. So in terms of invest in blue wetlands, I have problems, sorry, put more, blue food production, actually also marine gardens. I think that, I think that's also the role of aquaponics somehow, because I'm based in this nice blue city, Berlin, where a marine garden is a bit of a problem. But I think that, aquaponics, at least here, have more the function to bring the blue a little bit closer to also city people. I guess they don't really have a super effect on real fish aquaculture production. Or what would you say, Hanya and Per? That aquaponics would sort of really make a big difference, or is it more about education?
Well,
I think. Go on.
Can I go? Thank you. As far I'm concerned, aquaponics is the ideal actually way to educate people on different levels. I will recall an example from the London actually, because at the architecture department there, University of Greenwich London, they made a large investment and also beautiful demonstration facility of the vertical gardens. It's actually like the whole wall is presented like that. So from my opinion, that will be ideal and great examples, for example, to interact with the town city council, local authorities, etc., because they always spend some funding, some money to promote themselves, to promote the policy, climate change action, etc. So that will be a good example. And also there's a great example for schools, kids, and also the grown-ups. As a parent, I can really say it.
Per, you also wanted to step into that.
Yeah, you could argue that aquaponics could be the new temples for rich people, that they can go and because if you look at, for example, gastronomy, people, if you go to Copenhagen, go and eat at Noma, then they have produced their own the stuff they actually serve people. They produce locally. So if you want to produce aquaponics or in small productions, then you have to find a business case where you actually are paid for your production. And that could be that you set up a aquaponic production and then you combine it with a restaurant and tell the story, educate people, and people, especially these years, they are willing to pay for this good experience. And in that way, you make jobs, you make something new, and you educate people, and they even pay for it.
Catherine, can I just ask you also, you gave the example of working with an offshore wind park, where we have seen in many of our projects that originally the energy sector was not so much interested in working on multi-use, especially also because it's really sort of two different worlds, sort of.
But it's all about you mentioned an interesting point was we have the technology, the policies, and I said acceptance and willingness, and I have to say that it took us 10 years to get to that. Yes, we go ahead, and one of the reasons is because the very simple, I think, in a way, is that the company, the RWE, has actually bought Aeon, and it's two different mines, two different sets for the company, and their policies, their sustainability policies have been different, and RWE is very set on SDGs, and they have a very clear policy. How to go there and why, and it's obviously not greenwashing because they are ready to invest and do things. And the fact, I think, that the large project Mermaid had excellent conclusions from the potential multi-purpose platform in Denmark, as opposed to the North Sea and then Asia, etc., because it was not there. Everyone knows that when something is built already, then you can use it. And what is interesting also is that the technology they are using underwater was these big bags to put on the cables are so not disturbing the environment and could be even used for gardening on those bags. And I think this is something excellent. So Per, if you are interested in joining with us, I know Jon Nekotta has actually expressed his interest. I gladly get you there, but acceptance and willingness, Angela, I think this is the key.
Okay, and I think that here you make an important point that here it's really about, aquaculture as environmental friendly practice. I mean, given the fact that you mentioned also that it's not about fish aquaculture, but it's about, again, the mussels and
the mussels
algae.
and the algae. Yeah.
Okay, I think I have to come sort of, to
Bye-bye.
a conclusion here. Yeah. Sorry. Well, I see many also tomorrow at our members assembly, and again also Catherine, very welcome. To.
I know I don't have the time, unfortunately, but again, like Frederic, yay, and don't forget me as associate member because I'm always like supporting anyway. So
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Can I just come back to that Lisa has a good set to bring back to the global summit. So I think that we have already a good set of in terms of samples, in terms of really the most urgent recommendations. Is that really sort of, would it be correct to say, well, actually start off from the political point of view that you really sort of enable blue bioeconomy, so that it's not only talking, but that basically the different policy fields are coming together? Anybody can sort of,
No, but it's very much like that too, and it's also in the same way as educating and training the public. It's don't forget that the public is actually electing the ones making the policies.
Yeah, yeah. But what is it the lack of tradition? I mean, is it? I mean, now we can see that with offshore wind parks, it's sort of also took ages. That is it that it's more sort of the normal landscape now that people, if they see sort of an offshore wind park, perhaps that they are also nowadays built in a nicer way, so that they are not really a visual disturbance, but actually also good to look at. Does it take a long time that, I mean, we know, I mean, you know, we see agriculture and we do not know anymore how wild landscape looks like.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Look at the difficulties for a farmer to think that he should put back a wetland.
Yeah.
And even if you pay them, they don't want to do it. So.
But for the farmers, it took maybe 2,000 years before their activities was accepted. And I mean, we cannot wait many decades. So I think it's a very important task to convince people about that this is a healthy activities and that we actually give good service in relation to food, in relation to better climate, in relation to better nature. So that we actually educate people, and we maybe educate in different segments, children, adults, people going on a restaurant. So we use all the tools, and that's a response for the politicians, but it's also a response for the industry, I think.
True.
Fortunately, you know, this was sort of in the last word. It's, you know, we would need 1,000 years. We now have not even 1 minute left in order to move back. So thank you very much, and very much welcome also back again tomorrow morning to many of us here. And this goes also to Catherine and to Per. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Lisa, I think that we now have to move into sort of the big room back, yeah? Will you share the messages?
If you want, yes.
Please, because I really,
Okay.
yeah? Okay. So I just wonder how we do so now. In my case,
we have to push a button. But which button it is?
Yeah, which button?
The down on the right that says leave.
Where?
It's
yeah.
On this window, it's on the bottom of the right. A red button says leave.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Ah, okay.